I love trolling crankbaits on rivers, and thing about trolling crankbaits is that on a river system especially, a lot of times your good trolling spots have to be big spots, just to have room to work. You have to let out line. It has to be long enough to make it worthwhile, but especially if you're fishing less than 10 feet of water, don't always worry about using line counter rods and reels. I think that's a big mistake that people make a lot of times when fishing crankbaits in shallow water, is you feel like you have to use a line counter reel. And the thing about a line counter reel is, yeah, it's very precise, it's very accurate, but it also takes a lot longer to set up. If you're trying to set out, say, 2 to 4 lines in a boat, you almost have to, get down from the spot and have enough room, have enough time to set out lines, and it just consumes a lot of time. And then obviously, a lot of river systems today, there's just more and more boats on rivers too, and so it makes it harder and harder to troll cranks. If you're less than 10 feet of water, something I really recommend is go back to a spinning rod. It isn't rocket science. You take a bait like this here, small bill, it just has a very tight, subtle roll in the water, which seems to trigger these fish when the water is cold, versus say a deep diving bait with a big bill. You can sometimes catch fish on deep diving baits later on in the summer when the water warms up right next to the boat, where that bait's very nose down, tail up, but I find that's more of a mid to late summer thing when the water temps warm up. And so when the water's still cold, think horizontal baits. The other thing is I like to use a lot of balsa baits early in the year, or suspending baits. And so this here's the Northland Rumble Shiner. It's made out of balsa. See there, it's got that smaller bill, shallow running lure. You cast these baits, we can also troll them, but if you're trolling in 7 feet of water, it's a 22 to 25 foot cast behind the boat. If you have a 20-foot boat, you know how much that is. If you do any bow hunting, you can probably measure distance pretty accurately, but just a lot of times it's just a short cast. You can let out a little bit more line if you're never touching bottom. If you're hitting bottom pretty hard, you reel up line. It's really simple. You don't necessarily have to have a line counter reel. But what this does using a spinning rod is it makes it a lot faster. You can pull into a spot. You don't need room. You don't need time to set up. I mean, you pull into a spot, you cast behind the boat, and you're fishing immediately. And so what I find is by using a spinning rod for trolling cranks on rivers, especially for, I'm talking, shallow water where you don't have a lot of weight on the rod, you can basically just multiply the number of trolling spots that you have, in the sense that traditionally, we needed the long run with generally some faster water to troll crankbaits because you needed the room. With a spinning reel, with a spinning rod, you can pull in on a stretch that's 20 yards long, whip it back 20 feet, and go. And so you can really break down water and cover water fast on river systems. And so if you're fishing shallow water, don't be afraid to use a spinning reel, even on lakes. I mean, you just open up the number of spots that have possibilities tremendously when you don't need as much room to work.